Hey there, I'm John from the TJ Tribe. Just a quick update, we won't be sharing a Wednesday deal day today due to some unforeseen circumstances. But don't worry, we've got something valuable lined up for you instead. Today, we are diving into a question we get asked all the time about protecting assets. Many investors want to know, how can I protect my real estate portfolio from legal claims or creditors if I ever find myself in debt? We'll also highlight common mistakes to avoid so you can stay protected and build with confidence. Thank you so much for your patience and continued support, we truly appreciate you. Now, over to today's teaching.
If we are meeting for the first time, my name is TJ, your host, and I'm a former banker and founder here at the TJ Tribe. And I do business with a focus in student accommodation, flips, which is buy and sell, and coaching, with the hope that all of us, as young, upcoming modern parents, we can be able to have passive income from real estate. Welcome to the channel.
Okay. Thank you so much, TJ, for having me today. And also good morning to everyone who has managed to join in today to this session. So firstly, I would like to introduce myself before we get to the part. I know TJ has given us a little bit about who am I or what we do. I think the most important thing is what we do. We have a privilege of being associated with the TJ Tribe and also being introduced to a number of property investors where we learn, because not as much as we educate, we also learn together with the property investors. So I think today the topic is actually a very interesting topic that TJ has picked up, because most importantly from the mistakes that we have learned as property investors is to try and avoid them so that we don't do a repeat of those mistakes. So firstly, we do property. It's just property at PP Malipali Incorporated. And the nice thing about doing property is because we get to engage with a lot of different people from different backgrounds, having different goals. And in doing that, it gives us the opportunity then to learn on one, how to work with the property investors and how to help each other in their property investing journey. Because I think most importantly for us to be able to learn from the property investors is to be able to create such a relationship with the property investors. So today, most importantly, is to try and ensure that we do not repeat the same mistakes that our fellow property investors have made in preparation for our 2025. So I've picked up three most important. Obviously, that list is not a limited list. There is a number of those mistakes, but I think those 3 points that I'm going to be discussing today are the most critical points, because we all know as property investors that all we want or our end goal here is making profit. And in making that profit, we just have to make sure or ensure that we, one, do not try and do our own DIY on whatever it is that we try to do, depending on the portfolio that we want to focus on. So coming to your question then, TJ, firstly, we just need to understand that there are legal implications. So in any property transaction, there is always a legal implication. So meaning there is some form of complexity in each and every transaction that we encounter as legal, as property investors. So the first thing that I would want to point out, and obviously as we go along, if you can please just take notes so that we can be able to have some Q&A to try and analyze all of these topics that I'm going to be talking about now. So importantly is not having clear investment goals. So when you are not having a clear investment goal, it starts with one, not being able to embrace a long-term mindset. So what do I mean about that when I'm saying you are not embracing a long-term mindset? When we buy properties, firstly, we need to have a differentiation. Are we buying a property which is our residential home, or are we buying a property which is an investment property? So an investment property and a home, there's a little bit of a difference there in terms of our end goal in purchasing this property. So when I mean then about your clear investment goal, I mean, one, ensuring that you have an estate plan in place. So having an estate planning in place, it involves you, one, having a will in place, and it involves you having a trust in place. So what I mean again about having this estate plan in place, I mean that we must not only focus on buying more and adding more of these properties. Yes, I understand that we at first we buy properties under our personal names, and then we move and then we use our companies because our personal names are having some form of limitation on the number of properties that you can purchase. But when you use a certain an entity, either a trust or a property, in company, then at least we know that you have, like, you don't have a limit on the number of properties that you can purchase. Now, coming to this part of having an estate planning in place. So buying these properties, we must not buy them blindly, not knowing that we have an end goal. So our end goal obviously is to know that at the end of the day, what should happen? Because what should happen at the end of the day is, one, we are going to die. So what will happen should it happen? Should that time come? Number one. And number two, what happens if then we become incapacitated? Then we need then to cater for those things, so that our focus should not be counting the number of properties that we have. Our focus should be on what will happen in the future, because having a clear investment goal, it really indeed help you with your long-term goal. Because your long-term goal is, one, it can be your retirement. Yes, we are going, obviously all of us, we want to have a retirement that is at least prepared in advance. And then number two, what will happen then when we don't reach the retirement? Or when we get to that retirement, everything structured and in place. That's what I'm talking about, having that clear investment goal. Because if you don't have that, then it means that, one, your investment portfolio is scattered. So meaning you don't know what will happen tomorrow, next week, next year, and in 5 years' time, or at retirement time. So we need at least to know that when we plan to purchase these properties, and whilst we are counting the number of properties that we have bought, at least we are able to say that, okay, all of this portfolio is structured, number one. And then number two, this portfolio is structured in a manner that you know that even if you can die tomorrow, then at least your children, your spouse can be able to carry on. Because I think it's sometimes when we sit at our offices and you see that when you are winding up an estate and you see the number of properties and their values, and then you see the fees that you have to charge this client in winding up the estate, you see the fees that you have to charge this client on transferring these properties. And then also you see who's supposed to receive these properties. Because if there is no will, there is your spouse, depending on the type of marriage, and then there are children, again, depending on the age of the children. So I think importantly then is just to ensure that, yes, estate planning is there and it is in a structured manner. So gone are the days when having a will only is working. Because what we have experienced in our offices is that you can have a will, but a will can go missing. A will can be declared invalid, and a will can be destroyed, because obviously when you are creating a will as a testator, you are saying, I want this child to receive this percentage, my wife to receive this percentage. And then if the child sees that I'm not getting a higher percentage, what will happen if the child decide that, okay, let me rather destroy this will and then let's all get a fair share or an equal share? So it does happen. Hence I'm saying, gone are the days when you can only have a will in place and you don't have any other thing, because we no longer now want to depend on those wills. So that is why we stress the part of the estate planning, which is why it's number one on my list, because I feel that if I have to wind up the estate, I'm sitting with estates where I know that they are supposed to inherit, but one, they are in disagreement on them in the manner in which they want to inherit. Because remember, there is no wish that has been made by the person who was owning these properties on the way in which these properties should be inherited. So it means then that whoever is inheriting, they are now going to be fighting, because obviously the properties are not the same in value. And then also the income generated by these properties are not the same. So depending on how they would want, yes, the law will be there to try and guide them. But again, you need to try and avoid those conflicts within the family members, which might be your spouse together with your children, depending on the type of the marriage one, and also depending on the age of these children. So having that in place, it's so very much crucial, so that at least we should know that there is a structure, there is a will, there is a trust, and then you know that you are not trading using your own personal capacity, you are trading using a certain entity, which entity is sitting in a structured manner. So it is crucial for us to ensure that we do structuring, so that we know that even if tomorrow might happen that the Lord remembers you, at least you know that you can at least rest in peace. And then I'm not saying that people must be resting in peace now, but I'm just obviously ensuring that resting in peace, it means that indeed you are resting in peace, knowing for a fact that you know who's doing what, and you know, even so, because I think what is nice about having a structured portfolio is that you know that even if your children would want to inherit something in their hands, you know that that is impossible, because if they want to have something, you know you have created something for them, but it doesn't have a direct access to them. Even your spouse might not have a direct access there, because you know that there is a structure in place. If someone wants to have access, a person, I always use the word knock. You knock at the door, and then depending on whether the door will be open. If the door is not open, obviously there is a reason why the door can't be open. If it does open, then again, there is going to be a discussion on how much you want, what are you going to do with what you want. At least you know that it can be taken as a loan, or it can be taken as a donation, in whichever way. But most importantly, there's going to be a discussion in the manner in which whatever needs to be accessed or made available can be made available to whoever the person either is a spouse or is a child. So importantly, let's have that clear investment goal, having in mind our long-term goal. Our long-term goal, we know, all of us, that it is one, to have a better and a good retirement time. And then number two, to ensure that should it happen that we are remembered by the Lord, then at least all our stuff is handled well. There is not going to be a situation where you are going to be paying partaker a high amount of fees just because, one, he has to wind up the estate, and number two, to transfer the assets to those rightful beneficiaries. So now coming to this, because I think, again, just to highlight something, I'm sitting now with an estate. In this estate, the couple is married in commute of property, and then the properties, there are 3 properties in this estate, and then with these 3 properties, 2 of them are bonded, and one of the bonded properties is a matrimonial home, their home, and the other one is not bonded, and that one has got a less value. So the surviving spouse is unemployed. And now what happens is the surviving spouse has 2 children with the late husband. And while you are winding up the estate, obviously the most important thing is to determine the assets of the deceased. So in determining the assets of the deceased, you need to know which assets are still bonded or encumbered, or which assets are still having liabilities there and there. The cars, there are 3 cars. So with all of this, what I've realized is that because the wife is unemployed, the husband did not have a will. Now, what happened is, you now, depending on whether the husband had a life cover, and also depending on the pension of this husband. So when we go to check about the pension has got its own beneficiaries, of which the wife is a beneficiary in terms of the marriage in commute of property, and then the rest is distributed among the children in terms of the retirement policy. Coming to the life cover, we realize that the life cover, again, the wife on the life cover is having the 50%, and then the children are again having the equal share. But then the wife didn't know that then in both these policies, there is a child that has been mentioned, which is a child out of wedlock. Now, remember, there is no will here. Now, what we are sitting with now is there is no communication between the surviving spouse and that child. Now they need to start a communication. They need to have some sort of a relationship. There's never been a relationship in this. But because there is no will, that child, besides these policies where her name is mentioned, she has to inherit a part of this estate that we are administering. So what it means then, because there is no will, I'm going to stress this part of because there is no will. It means that half of this estate belongs to the wife by virtue of the marriage, right? And then half of this estate has to be divided amongst these children. These are these 2 children from the marriage and this 1 child. So what is the problem or the issue that we are sitting with now is the fact that the estate doesn't have any available funds, right? Then it means that now we need to decide between these 3 properties. Out of these 3 properties, which one can be sold? Remember now, having to sell these properties, we need to check on the liability part. How much is needed to pay off the debts? Now, you don't want that situation where your home is going to be the one affected. So we need to try and avoid that, because now where I'm sitting is we need to take a decision which property must be sold in order to cater for these obligations. So the bonded properties, remember I mentioned that the matrimonial home is one of them. And the matrimonial home is also the one that has got a higher bond. Bank is busy putting pressure on us because there is no repayment of the bond because the breadwinner was the late husband. So it is important then, the reason why I'm bringing this example, it's because even if we don't have a structure in place where we can have a trust or anything that we would want to do, at least let us have a will in place so that at least you should know that if there is a will, what is some sort of a direction that we can take so that we don't depend on the law in taking that direction. At least the will give us the direction. Because I think the most sad part is when you know you're relying on the law in order to have a direction on how to wind up the estate without having the wishes of the person who actually one was a breadwinner in this case, or the person who was the one was paying off everything and in whom these properties are registered together with the spouse, which spouse is now is obviously unemployed. So this example now is teaching us something. One, we need to ensure that even if you can say, Patega, I cannot afford to have a trust now, I cannot afford to structure now, but at least have a will in place, at least have some sort of a direction. Because I think importantly in this structure is one, the preservation of this wealth that we are creating. We're creating this wealth because we want to be able to have a good retirement stage, or we want to have a good retirement phase whenever that time comes. Then we need to ensure that we preserve this wealth. Preservation, then again, creditors must not come, and just like I'm being pressurized by the bank, they must at least know that even if they come, they are coming after something that is structured. And then again, management of these assets. We need to have a direction of how these assets should be distributed. How are these assets going? Because if you have a structure in place, we don't even have to look at that. Like, we don't even have to look at those assets. Those assets are sitting in a structured manner. So like, we don't even have, you can tell me that, okay, Patega, my husband or my wife is no more, but all these properties are sitting here. I don't even have to look at them. I just have to look at what is under your name. You can have your furniture, you can have your cars, and maybe if nothing is under your personal name, then there's not even a reason for me to wind up your estate. Everything is just structured in that manner. So at least we should know that your property is managed properly. Number two. And then the last part is, at least we should know how to distribute your estate, because it's painful when we have to really rely on the law to do the distribution. At least if there is a direction on how to distribute, I tell you, it gives us also a peace of mind, because at least we should know that these are the wishes, even if the family has conflict. If we have the wishes of the late person, or the testator, as we call them in terms of the will, if we have the wishes of that testator, then I tell you, everything runs smoothly. Regardless of the conflict within the family, we go according to what the testator is asking us to do, because the testator is giving us a direction. So estate planning is one of the most and the crucial points that when we get into our 2025, we need to have it in mind. And most importantly, we just need to know how to do the estate planning. It depends on what you have currently and what you intend to have in the future. And now coming to the second part. Right? On the second part is our failure to do due diligence. This part is what most of our property investors miss. They miss to have this due diligence done. This due diligence, or else what do we mean about due diligence? What we mean about having a due diligence is, one, you start when you are trying to locate the property. Let me say when you are trying to buy a property, you firstly check your location, right? Where your location is and what your intention obviously is the main point here. So intention is obviously you are buying a property as an investment, or buying to flip, or you're buying to rent out, or whatever you want to do. So it depends on your intention and your location. But most importantly, where my point is, once you identify the property, now you come to the contract. Remember, the contract is the backbone of that transaction. So the contract is given to you either by your estate agent, or is drafted by your, let me not say maybe by your attorney, because your attorney will never mislead you. Let's say it's drafted by your estate agency, or is drafted by the seller himself, or is drafted by you. I think most importantly is to understand that document, whether it's coming from those three people, but you need the person who's going to sign that document. Either you're signing it as a seller or you're signing it as a buyer. You need to understand that document. So our due diligence It does not end on us checking the location, on us doing the finances on the property to see if it's profitable. It does not end on us ensuring that we are having other people helping us to actually getting the investment property that is a best investment property or a profitable investment property. It does not end there. There is this contract. This contract will help you to either make or break what you have started. So now the most important points that I would like to highlight on this property is one, your intention. Because remember, as property investors, when we want to scale, when we want to venture into different portfolios, we can decide, okay, now I'm wanting to just build capital. If I'm building capital, I know I want to buy, renovate, and flip. And then you need to know the contract caters for that. Or else you are buying because you want to get your tenants, you want to rent the property out. Again, your contract should be drafted accordingly. Or you are the one who's like, okay, I'm buying these properties, and I don't want to flip. I don't want to have tenants. So we are talking about now the properties that are your vacant land. Right. So depending on which side or which type of portfolio you want to choose, I think importantly is to ensure that the contracts are mostly, you can get a standard contract, but as a property investor, you cannot rely on a standard contract. You start your OTP or your offer to purchase or your sale agreement can never be a standard document. So if you are flipping, you need to know it caters for that. Rent, if you buy to let, you need to know you are catering for that. The student accommodation, you know it caters for that. So importantly then, this part of the due diligence is on that property. So in that property, because remember, in drafting the contract, you need to know which type of property that we are talking about. So either it's a sectional title property, either it's a freestanding property, or it's either it's a vacant land property, or it's a property that is zoned differently, because also that forms part of your due diligence. So firstly, coming to your sectional title property, when you are doing your due diligence, I know that most of us, we miss this part of the body corporate. There are body corporate financials when we talk about a sectional title property. Those body corporate financials, they tell you about how the management of that property that you wish to buy is. Someone we were discussing, because he was wanting to buy a property, he did buy a property a year ago. He called me a year ago to find out, particular, what does administration work? Now, yesterday I had a conversation with this guy, and he was telling me that, you know what, actually I bought this property. One thing I forgot to do was to check the financials, only to find out in 3 months after purchasing this property or having the property registered under his name, he realized that actually this whole body corporate is going under administration. So you know what that means? It means a burden to you as a property investor, because obviously you will form part of the decision that will have to be taken on whether we need to try and save this whole body corporate by ensuring that we increase our levies and ensuring that we don't go through that administration. So it's important to ensure that when you are buying a sectional title property, you do that part of ensuring that you know what are the body corporate financials. And also, there is a deal that didn't come to light because why? There was no insurance on the body corporate. I know the banks, when you are taking a loan, that the banks, they would always want, it's part of their compulsory requirements, that they want to see the insurance cover on the body corporate. So if you are buying cash, then you are not looking at those things. Then again, it becomes a burden on you, because you need to ensure that you know that part, because you will buy a unit and you will find out, that the unit is not insured, or the body corporate does not have the insurance at all, because that's what happened with that transaction, is that there was no insurance at all. Now, how I came in is because now the seller wants to sue the buyer because the buyer wants to pull out. And now question is, how do you sue the buyer if you know that there is no insurance? Because as an owner of a sectional title property, you form part of the body corporate. So you should know if there is insurance or there is no insurance, so that you can disclose up front, so that whoever is purchasing your unit, then at least they should know up front that there is no insurance, so they can know what they are letting themselves in. Sectional title property, ensure that the body corporate financials are in place, and then also that there is insurance. And then the freestand. The freestand properties, on doing our due diligence, then we just have to ensure that we understand the zoning laws, because the zoning of that property is important for your intention. Because if your intention is to buy this property and also to do your multi-let, then you must know that you are allowed, in terms of the municipality's bylaws, that you can do your multi-let there. And then again, I sat with a situation where the multi-let was sort of like done by the seller, but then halfway, I don't know what happened, and then there was a levy that was on the municipal account because of non-compliance. I think it was not completed, but it might have been completed, but maybe not according to the bylaws. So what happened is, now, if you are buying the property and there is that situation, then you don't want to buy a property and you inherit the burden of ensuring that you complete the process. You want that process to be completed, so that you don't get to that situation where now there is already a penalty on this property and you are inheriting that problem. So we need to try and avoid, by understanding those bylaws for that property in that area, and ensuring that we understand what the property is zoned for. Because if the property is zoned for one residential building, then you want to do a multi-let, then at least it must be part of your prior due diligence in terms of doing your numbers and ensuring that whatever you have to do in terms of applying for rezoning, then you can know that there is that cost that you have to, so that you don't get yourself into a situation where your numbers now have to change because you did not understand the zoning of that property. That is number one. And then number two, the title deed restrictions. Title deeds, they have conditions, and one of those conditions is restricting what you can do in the property. Yes, as property investors, we look at the condition of the property, we look at the size of the property. So if the size of the property is huge, then you will think, okay, it's better for me to subdivide this property. Then what happens if the title deed has got a condition where it says the property cannot be subdivided? Now we need to understand those conditions in the title deed. So meaning, part of that contract, part of that offer to purchase, is to request a copy of that title deed so that you can see those conditions. So you should know whether it is the property that can be subdivided, or if it cannot be subdivided, is it a condition? Because now the conditions, you can negotiate with the municipality to have the conditions relaxed or have the conditions removed. So you need to know upfront what will be that cost, obviously, in terms of you trying to go back to the municipality and see if the municipality won't give you a problem or won't refuse your application to have that condition removed in order for you to subdivide the property. So we need to look on those title deeds. And then also the other part I've seen also is that when we buy properties, especially for student accommodation, there is NSFAS. NSFAS maybe has not yet accredited the property, or NSFAS has already accredited the property. So, or else the owner of the property was in the process of accrediting the property. Now, you don't want that process to be, you don't want that process now to be halted because of the fact that there's going to be a change of ownership. Because my understanding again is NSFAS does not accredit the owner, it accredits the property itself. But because the owner is the one who was the applicant, so you don't want that process now to be disturbed because of the change in ownership. So again, when we sign the offer to purchase, we need to know, I'm buying student accommodation. How are the students funded? Are they funded through NSFAS, or what will happen if I want to start? Because I understand that the application for NSFAS is done within a certain period, and also there are certain requirements that NSFAS wants the property to comply with. At least you should know upfront that must be part of that offer to purchase, so that you should know that if it happens that the process was already there, then at least I should not worry. I can allow the seller to conclude, or you can find out from NSFAS or whichever university if that process can be changed and you become the applicant, and give the owner of the property a power of attorney to do that for you. So it depends. But what I'm trying to stress here is making sure that that is part of your offer, so that at least you should know that you don't lose your rental once you become the owner of the property because your NSFAS application was not completed on time. So most importantly, that contract has to speak that language, so that you should know that you are not going to be left stranded for the whole year because your intention was to accommodate your student accommodation. So the offer to purchase again has to be drafted accordingly. And then again, coming to the vacant land. So if you are buying a vacant land, we need to ensure that in our vacant land, we are aware of what is in that vacant land. For example, is there already a water connection there? Is there already an electricity connection there? So that you should understand the cost up front, that, okay, owner, I want to know what will happen, because sometimes if there are none of these connections, then it means that you as the buyer, maybe the owner will shift that obligation to you to say that I'm selling this land as is. If you want to do connections with the municipality, you have to do the application. So at least if you know upfront, and if you do not want to take that burden, then at least your offer to purchase should state that it's a vacant land and you want your vacant land to have all those connections, so that you don't have a situation where the connections are not there and it becomes your problem, because we did not want to put it on the OTP, or we did not want to look at that, and now it is becoming a problem because on your calculations or on your numbers, when you were wanting to see if this property is going to be the profitable property for you, you did not account for that. So importantly, it's important to make sure that your offer to purchase is tailored for that, so that you don't miss that part and you end up inheriting a burden. So I think the offer to purchase, as I mentioned earlier, is a backbone. So you need to ensure that this offer to purchase speaks your language as a property investor, so that you don't get yourself to inherit all of these other burdens because we did not ask these questions. And then coming to my last point, we are talking about the part that the property investors are failing also to do is to learn. I know in our offices, you would want to find out about something, and we as attorneys, we would want to charge you a fee, so that you must come forward and do a consultation with me and have a fee. I think the privilege that we have been afforded to deal with these property investors, we realize that, sometimes in charging these fees, while we are still navigating, it really doesn't, I would say for me, it doesn't make sense. I'm not saying for other attorneys, I'm speaking for myself. Don't misinterpret that part. I'm speaking for myself. Sometimes you would see that, in order for you to help this person is to have a conversation with this person, so that you should understand who this person is. So this part that I'm pointing out now is my number 3 important, is us allowing ourselves to learn. So in learning, it means in asking questions. And asking these questions, it means to ask these questions from the right people. So we need to ask these questions from the right people. We need to ask these questions actually from whoever that we think will walk the journey with you. So our privilege then, when we were introduced to these property investors, we realized that there is a lot that we need to learn from each other as property investors and as PPM. So that is why we have a 30 minutes free Zoom meeting, so that we can understand you as a person, understand where you are coming from, and understanding your clear goal. Because we want to ensure that when we give you an advice, we give it an advice knowing for a fact which direction you're heading. Because importantly, while you are learning, you need to learn. Because you must remember, I tell you, even sometimes the 30 minutes is not enough in order for us to have a discussion. Because having a discussion is obviously now trying to be in a relaxed mode. Now we are trying to know each other, so that at least we should know that with everything that you are trying to do, then you are not heading one to a wrong direction, and then number two, getting to be misinformed. I know there is internet, I know there are courses, I know there is all of this, but individually as a person, then we know that me as Upateka, this is what I need. And then we need, then when we're having that discussion, to understand that, okay, this is what you need, and then this is what is available, or these are the opportunities available, so that we can try and analyze everything that you would want to do with your property investing journey, and also what will be your goals. Because I think most importantly, in us allowing ourselves to learn and also not relying too much on the internet. I know that a lot of us, because obviously everything is available on the internet, but we need to tie the information that we receive from the internet with our own individual goals, so that we should know that we are not going with the crowd. We are just we are just ensuring that whichever is our focus in terms of our long-term goal, is our focus in terms of what we need to do in order for us to create this wealth. Because property investing, we know for a fact that it is one of the ways in which we can try and build our wealth. And we know that property investing is one of the ways in which we can try and plan our estate accordingly, and ensuring that when we leave this planet, we are not leaving this planet or with our families not knowing what to do and not having anything that they can start with. So I think allowing ourselves to learn is ensuring that we are not making those mistakes, and we are not repeating the mistakes that were made by our fellow investors, and that we are ensuring that the information that we have received from the internet, it has been confirmed, it is true. Because sometimes the information that we check on the internet, it does not inform you about the updated case law, for example. Because case law does, for example, I know that there was a case that came about, last year about, I think if not late last year, early this year, about divorce. So again, because a lot of people, they always think that they can access this, they can do this. And sometimes if there are changes like those, then at least we should know that at least we have that information, and we are aware of what we cannot do as property investors. So I think the other part that I just forgot to mention, I know when we do our due diligence, we do a Lightstone report. And our Lightstone report, obviously, it has got a lot of information that we need as property investors, especially location and to do the variations in terms of the property market and all of that. And then it does show us about endorsements on that Lightstone. So these endorsements, they say something on the property itself, because endorsements, for example, there is one endorsement that we saw on one of our properties, and that endorsement was the Eskom servitude. And then this Eskom servitude, we were not aware how these Eskom electric lines are going to be located in the property until we have to get the document itself. So most importantly is once you see those endorsements, either it's an attachment or it's what, we need to know what are those endorsements for, so that we can know if it's not something that restricts us or if it's not something that we really, really need to pay attention to. So we have to make sure that when we get those, I appreciate some other property investors. I appreciate some other property investors who actually come forward and say, Pateka, I see this endorsement. Can you please check for me? What is it for? So that at least we should know upfront, we are not ignoring those things. And then, and again, these are not the things that will actually try and burden our venue because of the fact that we did not see that there's a restriction on something, or there's an attachment, or there's what, or there's what. So we just need to ensure that we know all of those things when we do our due diligence. Yes, thank you so much. I think that was not too much to say for the
Amazing.
day. But if you have any questions, then yes, we can.
100%. Thank you, Pateka, and for the presentation and for the valuable information. I think my takeaway for me here is around two things, and that's my personal ones. Is to ask myself the next question that says, am I clear on what will happen to my family if I'm to go tomorrow? Like, am I clear of what's going to happen, right? And that's the first one. And I think for me, that's a yearly review of what I need to do, and just to make sure that we've got that under control, because it can happen anytime. That's the first thing. Then the second part for me, the learning here, is what you speak about in terms of due diligence. Whew. Yeah, I thought that maybe I am now good at due diligence, but things always crop up, right? And you miss something, and it's a lesson. So at the office now, we now have like this spreadsheet where we just drop in everything that we are learning from due diligence, and how did we do that due diligence actually. And we are now forming it part of our due diligence practice. And we're just getting better and better at it, but you can never be on top of it.
Well, I am sure that you've been writing so many notes on this one. And I'm sure you probably have pages and pages of just the learnings that we got in today's video. So well done in learning with us. And my friends, this is just the start. We have more learnings to help you on your journey of building alternative income. And my team and I, we want to help you, but we cannot help you if we don't know who you are, where you are on your journey, right? So help me so that I can be able to help you. By doing that, all you need to do is just jump onto our website. You'll see it comes up here, www.thetjtribe.com. And all you need to do is to click on the link that says Discovery Call. Book my slot for Discovery Call, and we will guide you on the next steps of how best you can be able to learn more. What you learned today is probably maybe about just maybe like a fraction of what we teach here at the TJ Tribe. So let me help you, but I can't help you if I don't know who you are, and I can't help you if I don't know where you are in your journey. I am eager to help you to make this year, or to rather guide you so that this year can become your best year ever in real estate. But above that, thanks for watching. And if you have to send this to someone else, please do that. Don't forget to share. And if you have commented, hey, we will check you out in the comments again. But don't forget to book that call. It is essential for your generation. It is essential for you creating an alternative income. And we want to help you. It is I, TJ.